I'm very happy to host the latest in my long-running series of Curatorial Conversations. These events, as some of you will know, they come up about once a month, and they take a behind-the-scenes look at exhibitions of particular interest. And today we are featuring one of the most talked about exhibitions of the year, Jean-Clair's Inferno at the Scuderie del Quirinale in Rome. This massive presentation of infernal imagery was conceived by the art historian and writer Jean-Clair, longtime director of the Picasso Museum in Paris, director of the Venice Biennale for its centennial in 1995, and since 2008, member of the Académie Française. And I have skipped many, many highlights in Jean-Clair's career, but that should give you an indication of his scope and his impact. The show was curated in collaboration with neurologist and historian of science, Laura Bossi, who recently curated another excellent show at the Musée d'Orsay on the invention of nature in the 19th century. Now, given the restrictions on international travel at the moment, there are many of us here in Britain who will be unable to see L'Inferno di Jean-Clair in person. And so I'm extremely grateful that both Jean-Clair and Laura Bossi have taken the time from their busy schedules to give us a guided tour of the very special show that they have curated. Now, as usual with these curatorial conversations, we'll start with a presentation from the curators. They will take us through the rooms and the highlights of the show itself. And hopefully we will have time for a brief discussion with some questions from me and maybe some questions from you before we wrap up things and hand over to Skafi, Tuk, and Tuckett. So without further ado, I will ask Laura if you can share your screen and make a start with your presentation. Okay, it's looking good. And yes, perfect.
Here we are.
Great.
So, well, if you all agree, after thanking you for inviting us and saying hello to some friends that I have seen appearing in the little icons, I would try to be your Virgil and give you a very rapid guided tour in our exhibit. As you know, the Scuderie del Quirinale in Rome are a sort of Grand Palais of Italy. It is a Kunsthalle with 10 very large rooms, and the exhibit was sort of the end and culmination of the Dante year in Italy. So we were a little bit afraid that after all these shows and seminars, etc., people would be tired of hearing of Dante, but fortunately it doesn't seem to be the case. And so we have managed to collect some 232 paintings, works on papers, sculptures, and also some items of popular art and cinema. Manuscripts, illuminated manuscripts, etc., from 87 lenders in 15 countries. So you will understand that this will be only a very, very rapid highlight. We shall start with actually with a film that we are showing in the monumental staircase of the Scuderia. This is a silent film that was produced as a sort of already of blockbuster in 1911. So at the very beginning of the, not only the Italian, but the European movie industry, conducted by Bertolini, Padovan, and De Liguoro, and recently restored by the Cinematheque in Bologna, and on Dante's Hell. And this is just to show to all the people interested in also in movies and in other sort of art that the hell generally was a sort of founding myth for opera, for example, but Dante's hell is really one of the foundations of the movie industry in a way. And then in the first floor, we have decided to start with some general concepts about hell, about Christian hell in a prologue that is not a prologue in the paradise like in the Faust, but rather in a prologue on the origins of hell. That, as you know, is not clear in the official scriptures, but rather depends more on extra-biblical narratives, and especially on the fall of the rebellious angels. That is represented in the exhibit by, I must say, rather extraordinary sculpture featuring about 60 figures of angels that fall and are transformed progressively into devils. And they are on the top of this sculpture that is only one block of marble, one of the most incredible creations of sculptures in the Venetian entourage.
And they are swallowed by the mouth of Satan.
Yes, they are
not very
precipitated into a hell mouth that you don't see very well in this show, and they are progressively transformed into devils with horns that are. Then another basis for a sort of founding principle of the exhibit is to show that Dante actually is illustrating what we call in Italy the novissimi, that is the last things, the four last things: death, judgment, hell, and paradise. And to them, he has added purgatory, a transient realm to the two eternal regions of damnation or salvation. And purgatory, which had been introduced in the Catholic doctrine around 30 years before Dante put pen to paper, was actually the diffusion and in Italy, and not only, also in other Catholic countries, of the concept of purgatory really owes a lot to Dante's comedy. The four last things are represented here by death, La Muerte de Hilderonza, a large statue in polychrome wood that comes from the Museo Nacional de Escultura de Valladolid. And to show the dichotomic, dualistic concept of the eternal judgment, we show this very well known and extremely beautiful Last Judgment by Beato Angelico, where you see here the paradise and yes, the damned. And obviously, before you enter hell, you have to pass a gate, through a gate. And this is not an unimpressive one, because we managed to have the loan of Rodin's Gate of Hell, which is in a way the culmination and the conclusion of the work of this great artist. And it was also an incredible tour de force of the teams that took care of the transportations from Paris to Rome. As you see, this is the version that serves for the bronze versions, and it comes from the Fonderie near Paris, and it's about 7 meters high. And
oh
yes, you may.
One thing interesting is that the figure of the so-called thinker is actually in the canonical form of the melancholic man, l'uomo accidiosus, Satan, the devil, is the typus of the melancholic man, l'accidiosus. That's one of the reasons why finally I decided to do this exhibition, because my first interesting exhibition, according to me, was one on melancholy, the typus melancholicus through the centuries, from the antiquity to Charcot and the modern psychiatry.
Well, the black bile of melancholy was said to be balneum diaboli. So it's well, together with the hell, the gates of hell, we present also a series of drawings and little statues. As you know, many of these figures have had an independent life, such as Le Baiser comes from Paolo Francesca, and Le Penseur from Minos. The second room shows some early metaphorical figures of hell that have all shown an extraordinary persistence. And one of the most impressive one is the hell mouth that swallows the damned, and that gives evil and eternal condemnation an immediately recognizable and horrific face. We have had some really wonderful loans from the British Library, la Bibliothèque Nationale, and obviously from the Vatican and several Italian libraries. And here you have just a couple of them that show the different form that it can take. So at the beginning, it was rather anthropomorphic. It appeared first in the Anglo-Saxon context in the early 11th century, but spread all over Europe, and in the form of miniatures and sculptures. And here it's particularly amusing because you see the angel that tries to block the entrance with it, well, not the entrance, but the blocks the door so that they cannot get out. And the persistence.
Je peux dire un truc?
Oh oui, bien sûr.
Évidemment. And this recurrent theme of the mouse, hell mouse, is also, Freud was one of the first, of course, to notice it, is a kind of vagina dentata, these big pointu teeth, who not only swallow the poor men who dare to enter, but also qui les déchire, tear them into pieces. So it's always interesting in the show to go from the 11th, 12th century up to now, up to an imagery which is totally actual, totally present today.
Well, the success of this figure of the Stoppers is also shown in or borne out by works, for example, such as the monster of Bomarzo, that is here shown in a picture by modern photograph by Herbert List, or more amusingly in the Cabaret L'Enfer in Paris, that was a celebrated hangout of the Surrealists, here shown by Robert Doisneau. And a couple of large paintings that we have shown and are a sort of agrandissement, a sort of larger version, yes, of the miniatures, such this extraordinary painting by an unknown artist that comes from Lisbon, where you show another very important figure, which is the presence of how you call that? Au chaudron, where the damned are boiled. So when with our colleagues from the Scuderie, we call these sections, but that was not very serious, bocche e marmitte. So mouths and cooking pots in a way. And this is also obviously a reflection from an anthropological point of view of the archaic fear of being devoured. Another topos that is very, very old, very ancient, but has an incredible persistence is the theme of the descent of a living person in the underworld. And obviously, Dante will pick up this theme from the Greek and Latin myth, particularly from his beloved Virgil, from the sixth canto of the Aeneid. And here you see a version of both of the Hellmouth and of the descent of Aeneas and the Sibyl from Cuma in an extraordinary painting. This is another version of a Hellmouth in a sort of feline version. And this represents the descent of the Christ to the limbus, where he descends to recover Adam and Eve and the patriarchs. But actually, it's not real catabasis. It's more, Jesus is already dead when he descends to the limbus, but the iconography is the same. Obviously, the most beautiful catabasis is the one described by Dante in first person in the Divine Comedy. But the infernal landscapes that the ancient myths have described have shaped our vision of hell. And as a dark, as a dismal place with castles, with ice, with fire, with 4 underground rivers, with gates separating the domain of the dead from the domain of the living. Here you have a particularly impressive representation by Monsu Desiderio. The following room, the third room, shows Dante as an author of the Divine Comedy. Sorry, I've been too rapid, too quick, where we show several illustrated editions of the poem, accompanied by 19th century portraits of the poet, and by an excerpt of a film that we'll see later, La Mirabile Visione. The first piece that was shown until recently in this room was the very famous Botticelli that unfortunately had to go back to the Vatican. So don't be too disappointed if you don't see it. And obviously this is the celebrated Shim with the topography of hell, with the 9 circles that gradually descend until to the center of the earth, where Lucifer is stuck. And we all who have studied the Divine Comedy have tried to make similar drawings in order to understand how Dante, as a great architect, has built his Divine Comedy. And there have been several several scientists and scholars that have tried to measure and to reconstruct the architectures of Dante's hell, starting with the first topographer, Manetti and Vellutello, until also the young Galileo Galilei. Well, we have dedicated a small section of the show to these topographic aspects. Here you see Lucifer stuck in the center of the earth. As you know, Dante's cosmology is diabolocentric, so the center of the world and also of the universe is the devil. So here you can see, as we had said, one of the portraits of Dante. We have chosen this one because it recalls the descriptions by his friend Boccaccio, who said that he was always melancholic and pensoso, pensive. Well, he is dressed in red, actually, and this has probably two reasons. One, very practical. He was a member of the associations of the Speziali, who dressed in red, but also the colors of hell are red and yellow, and well, the colors of the purgatory are green and blue, etc., etc. And well, he is sitting here a little bit like Goethe in his famous portrait. And this is the film that presents, it was a sort of colossal that was directed by Caramba in 21. And it's a sort of diptych with the biography of Dante, followed by 3 episodes of the Divine Comedy, the encounter with Beatrice, Ugolino, Paolo, and Francesca. In the following rooms, we have presented a series of representations, illustrations of the Divine Comedy. First of all, in the books, this is the celebrated Giuntina that has inspired also the graphist for our catalog, with the discussion of the topography of hell by Manetti, Flaxman, who takes again up the sort of Botticelli style with a very elegant drawing, and obviously the most famous more recent version by Gustave Doré in 1861. And then follows a large selections of drawings, the Dante Historiato by Federico Zuccari, who, as you probably know, because this is quite famous, has made drawings when he was in Spain at the court of the whole Divine Comedy, about 80 drawings, very beautiful drawing in black and red chalk. And a little bit less known, we have had presented a large selection of the 24 drawings by Stradano, who belongs to the same group of intellectuals active in Florence at the end of Cinquecento. And Stradano is more already in a way more modern, more dramatic, less interested in the architectures and more in the figures and the encounters. And well, these 2 artists are probably the ones who have more, who have been the most important to establish a sort of canon of representations of the 2 pilgrims that go from scene to scene and from encounter to encounter. In modern times, Miquel Barceló, a Spanish, a Catalan artist, have taken up the challenge to illustrate the complete Divina Commedia. And he was very successful, I believe. Here are some examples. And he has published this, a wonderful book in 3 volumes. The pictorial canon is different because it has been determined mainly by large paintings that have focused, started from, I would say, the 17th century, but mainly in the 19th century, on the contrast between a sort of solemn humanity of the 2 pilgrims, and Dante and Virgil here, and a sort of harrowing inhumanity of the sinners. Delacroix, with his Barque de Dante, that unfortunately the Louvre didn't lend us, but that we present in the version of Manet that has copied it. There are a lot of copies of this extremely important work. Is one of the most important paintings to establish the canon of representation. And the preferred subjects will be the most pathetic, dramatic, and vivid figures, such as Gianni Schicchi here, who is condemned to bite Capocchio. Both Capocchio was an alchemist. Gianni Schicchi, you probably know from the opera, had presented himself as another person in order to falsify testament. And here you always have the 2 solemn figures. Or probably the most popular figure is Ugolino, that is condemned to bite the head of the how you say Ruggeri, who had condemned him to the Torre della Fame and to die of death. He is in the frozen Cocito, and this is one of the most popular scenes. The other one being obviously Paolo and Francesca, of whom there are about 600 versions. Here is one by Victor Prouvé, Les Voluptueux, where you see Paolo and Francesca together with other sinners that are swept away by the wind. And then there are many, many versions. We present a couple of them. Here is one by Ari Schäfer. This is a version from Hamburg, Francesca and Paolo in Wirbelsturm. And again, Ugolino and the Archbishop Ruggeri in the glass, in the frozen Cocito. This is an incredible, very large painting by Gustave Doré, already very, I would say, Hollywoodian press, very. And then there is a second floor that is quite separated because you have to climb a staircase. And the second floor is entirely devoted to the hell on earth. The visit
today.
Until today,
Okay.
yes. We start with something that is a sort of glimpse of domestic popular hell, because popular art has always presented the devil and hell more in a way that concern the realm of magic. There can be good devils or devils that can be contrived by very powerful magicians to work for them. And this is a particularly impressive installation lended by the Museo delle Marionette of Palermo, where you can see a Neapolitan theater with a hell mouth, dating from 1920, again, the incredible persistence of the theme, with a collection of pupi, of puppets, mainly from Sicily, that represents various aspects of death, you see two dancing skeletons of the devil in different forms, and also magicians. Here, for example, is Fata Alcina with three heads, one of them being death. And then, after this pause with popular art, we try to show several other incarnations and metamorphoses of the devil, because obviously the devils are not only in the hell, they come to earth, they visit us, and their representation are different when they are described by other great poets. For example, this is the Milton's devil, Milton's Satan, that calls upon the devils in Milton's Paradise Lost. So it's a sort of heroic version of Satana. And we must say we had a Satanist that kneeled down in front of this picture in the exhibit.
Thomas Lawrence.
Yes. Well, this painting by Sir Thomas Lawrence was immediately very, very famous, and also criticized by some people who suppose that he tried to emulate Fuseli, but it's a very, very impressive painting, and also emblematic of the Renaissance, of the interest for the Divine Comedy in all Europe, also in England, with Reynolds and Lawrence, etc. And obviously, Mephistopheles is a completely different figure, because he serves God and always works for the good, even while attempting to do the evil. Ich bin ein Teil von jeder Kraft, die stets das Böse will und stets das Gute schafft. He said, I'm part of the power that eternally wills evil and eternally works good. So it's another completely different vision, more akin to the early vision of Satan in the Bible as a tempter of Job. And obviously there is also the more melancholic incarnations. Here is the one that has served for the poster of the exhibit, a very melancholic and powerful Lucifer by Franz von Schnuck. And then before we come to the modern hell that man has built for man, we have devoted a small room to temptation and sin. And obviously the devil comes to us to seduce us, to induce us to sin. And it was in the heart of Europe, mainly in Germany, in the Netherlands, where artists such as Schongauer, Bosch, the Bruegel family, Dürer, Peter Huys have most represented all these incursions of the devil in our world. And Saint Anthony the Abbot, the pious anachorete who lived in Egypt in the 3rd century, was a sort of accomplished athlete of resistance to temptation. And painters have loved to represent him with beautiful naked women trying to tempt him, but obviously he resists staunchly, or also with the series of an incredible variety of monsters that have given a testimonial of an incredible creativity. These scenes have also been popular again in the 20th century as a beloved subject of both symbolist and expressionist painters. Here you have a strange, almost gynecological representation by Otto Dix of temptation. We also have a small version by Cézanne. So And this is an incredible condensation of hell and the 7 deadly sins by the workshop of Bosch that was generously led by the Museo Lazzaro Galliano in Madrid, representing the vision of Tundal. And here you can see, for example, the black rat represents la luxure.
Oui.
Again, you have here, this is again a representation of luxuria. You have melancholy, acedia, and well, all of the deadly sins with again a sort of landscape with fire and strangely a beautiful northern sky.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue?
No, please go on.
The following 2 rooms are focusing on hell on earth, on the devastations of war, on madness, and all the suffering cities, of prisons, of the asylums, and of the dehumanized modern metropoles, culminating on concentration camps. You see the starting of the polluting factories in assembly lines, mines. Here, this is a particularly moving and impressive painting by a Belgian artist, Roche-Gross, who painted this during the First World War, which is called The Death of the Purple. He is obviously weeping upon the death of poetry and music. And here you see a modern industrial town preparing for war. Madness, represented here both by Giacomo Balla at the beginning of the 20th century and by David Nebreda in an auto-portrait with his own excrements.
Schizophrenia.
Yes, he was himself. And this very famous painting by Félix Vallotton of the First World War, where war reaches a new sort of level of atrocities with incendiary bombs, weapons of massive destructions,
Yes.
exodus of civil. Georges Leroux, gas, poisonous gas. And we try to see that on both sides of the conflict, the artists paint the same thing. Otto Dix and Percy Dale Smith, in his Dance of Death series, paint the horrors of the First World War. And obviously this culminates in the sort of height of horror with the death camps, a world that is methodically organized, where Non ha luogo il santo volto, and that really recall Dante's Inferno. And we present it with few works by artists that have themselves lived experienced the concentration camp. One, yeah, Boris Dasliski was in Buchenwald, and he wrote, "If I go to hell, I will draw it." I have already had the experience. I have been there, and I have painted it. This is a painting that it comes from Beaubourg in Paris, but it's never shown, and it's a very impressive painting, very large, 5 meters. And then we have 3 paintings by Zoran Muzic, who was born in Austria, lived in Italy and France, a true European, who was in Dachau. And in the 70s, he painted again a series of figures and of corpses that he has recalled from his experience in Dachau, with the title, Nous ne sommes pas les derniers, non siamo gli ultimi, we are not the last ones. And then we have made a little homage to Primo Levi, who was not so much celebrated in Italy. And we have been able to show the manuscript of his modification to the first version of Sequestro un Uomo for his edition in Einaudi in 57, with the book that he had dedicated to his wife and all the additions he made. If this is a man, sorry, I didn't. I must apologize, but there are some titles in all the languages. I hope you could follow, but obviously you can ask questions. And obviously at the end, as you remember, at the end of the Inferno, Virgil and Dante managed by climbing on the legs of Lucifer and then to cross the whole hemisphere to see again the stars. And so the last room shows a series of constellations, including this one by Gerhard Richter, this starfall by Anselm Kiefer, and also a series of astronomical drawings so that the visitors can do the same and look up and we have to the stars, and we have also collected a series of poems on the stars and quotations of Dante.
Rivedere le stelle. Bravo, bravo.
Well, sorry. It was really a very rapid tour.
That's absolutely wonderful. First of all, congratulations on just the number of loans that you managed to arrange. I mean, incredible. Also, for those of you who haven't seen, this is the beautifully designed book with its lovely red painted page ends. Very, very impressive collection, and if everyone is interested in all of the details, then you can find all of them here, plus some fantastic essays. We have about 15 minutes, and I want to ask just one or two quick questions and then leave some time for other people in the room, the Dantisti here, who are all just about to start their study. One thing that I wanted to say is, of course, it's kind of obvious, but here at the Warburg Institute in the library, which is just on the other side of my library here, we have lots of copies of the Divine Comedy, and of course this one is A.B. Warburg's own beautiful edition with, you can see his bookplate. But also, when I was looking for that one, right next to it, because Warburg was very much about the law of the good neighbor, so that the book that you're looking for always leads you to the book you need. Well, the other book next to it is an Italian Dante. That's a bilingual Italian and German from the early 20th century, but this is an early 19th century Italian edition. And as you can see, it comes from another famous Warburg scholar, Francis Yates, and has a wonderful edition. I looked for a little while for Ernst Gombrich, and I couldn't find his copy, but I'm sure it's there as well. So one thing I want to ask you, it's kind of a simple question, but so many aspects of your exhibition really strike me as Warburgian. But I'm curious for you, Jean-Clair in particular, what strikes you as Warburgian about the exhibition? Is that a fair conclusion?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm really a bit, but I'll try my best. I'll do my best.
Don't worry, don't worry.
When I was asked to do this exhibition, I said, no, it's impossible. First of all, I'm French, and Frenchmen, as you know nothing about Dante. More than 25 translation of Divina Commedia. Now all worse one than the other. Impossible to catch also all the political implications of the Divina Commedia, totally unknown to the French people. So it's not a. Well, I was more. And the second thing was what I don't remember. Oh yeah. Je me souviens plus pourquoi j'ai là. Oh, je pouvais pas faire là. Well, I don't. But finally, I said yes. I'm very interested. Why? Because you said at the beginning that it was an exhibition of art history. It's not an exhibition of art history. It's an exhibition of ideas, philosophy, apropos of objects of art, which is something totally different. I've been educated in France first as an art historian, very much from the point of view of aesthetics, but I hate aesthetics. And I began to be free when I went to America, to Harvard University in 65, 66. And there I met people who taught me another way of looking at works of art, including Panofsky, Cassirer, and so on. So another school of which France knows about nothing. And of course, it was this type of approach to the work of art, which make me very eager to try to make an exhibition about Inferno. The other reason why not is because even in Rome, the center of Christianity, and you don't find any more ecclesiastic to dare to speak about Lucifer, Inferno, and so on. Even the Pope is very, very cautious now to speak about Inferno, so I felt myself very lonely because nobody could answer my questions. So anyway, Harvard University and the school of Panofsky, Cassirer, and so on, finally to Warburg, was the way to cope with this very ambitious and incredible project. And I must say that if I had time and strength, maybe, because it was very short, it was a year and a half, very, very short to make such an exhibition, the last chapter would have been devoted to Abbey Warburg for two reasons. First, because with Warburg, for the first time, the work of art was no longer a work of art, but a work of spirituality, philosophy, sociology, all dealing with Inferno and with a topos like Inferno. And also because what? Because and the way Warburg tried to manage with aesthetical proposition, which he put away in the sort to work with philosophy, psychoanalysis, sociology, literature, religion, of course, was the only way to deal with l'Inferno. So and another reason, more, but I could not write that, but maybe in another life. I'll try to do that. As you know, better than I, Warburg was obsessed with a snake. He made work incredible when he was visiting the Hopis Indians in America, the snake, the figure of a snake. And then when he got mad, when he got schizoid or paranoico schizoid, he was always obsessed with a snake, or which as a kind of thing which crossed all his life long. And as you know, the snake is really the royal beast of the Inferno, the serpent, holy snake. So there was something very which gave me the l'audace to try to deal with this subject.
Yes.
Fortunately, because of my comment ça s'appelle?
Notre Virgile.
Virgilia, which accompany me throughout the 9 robes of the hell.
Yes. Well, I'm very glad, and thank you for spelling all of that out. I mean, there are so many other areas, of course, including Mnemosyne and memory, and
Yes.
you're very, very strong in the catalog, I think, on the memory of hell. And our good friend Lina Bolzoni wrote a very nice essay in the catalog about this very important topic. But there are so many, of course, the gestures, the pathos formal, the various other aspects that Dante inspires in Warburg and in Botticelli, his first subject of study. So fantastic. But of course, we don't have to see everything through the eyes of A.B. Warburg. The other thing that really struck me, and it's really my last question here, is I was very struck that you began with cinema, and that you start with early cinema. And I have worked myself a lot on Shakespeare. And again, I'm very taken with a very early silent film version of The Tempest. Incredible, incredible film. I think it's better than any modern film. There's something so sophisticated about these early films. But I'm also thinking of Walter Benjamin and his idea that earlier authors call forth these later technologies. So because of Shakespeare, you need cinema, he says. Would you say the same with Dante? And can you say a little bit more about how Dante leads to cinema?
I think on cinema, you should really go to the exhibit that is now at the Musée d'Orsay, which is an exhibit on how the evolution of society and of painting. You can see the figures that literally try to show movement, to show the wind, yes, and there is also the creation of a public that really awaits cinema, and for Dante, probably it's a little far away, but it's a fact that the first big movie in Italian cinema is on Dante's Commedia, and it also has an incredible series of special effects that try to render the infernal atmosphere. So the innovation is linked to the but it's not only that. Obviously, the first movies took up the most famous and popular stories, myths, figures, because they wanted to have a public. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm aware that we only have about 3 minutes left, so
sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you for giving us.
We did not show any William Blake.
No,
but there are some William Blake in the exhibition, of course.
But not the major one, unfortunately, because there is a show and the Australian ones couldn't come, obviously. We didn't even ask because of COVID. Yeah, it was a strange experience to make this show without traveling.
But even so, I think it's extraordinary what you brought. Is there any one piece that you think you were most proud of or most happy to be able to include?
No, but I'm very proud of having, how shall I say, many works in this exhibition are today considered as pompiers or academic. But when you see them in the exhibition, they are not at all any longer academic or pompier. On the contrary, and people are struck by the quality of these works. Think of Roche-Grosse or people like that.
Oh, ouais.
Incredible. So, in a way, this type of exhibition, inspired also by Warburg, should give the idea of putting again in the collections today, in the museum rooms, so-called academic paintings, because they are not academic, they are not pompiers, and sometimes they are masterworks, which are again, which are put into light. Another problem is the fact that, for instance, for the Buchenwald painting, this painting was given to a French museum, and this French museum never dared to exhibit this painting because
Music non plus.
Music non plus either. So in a way, an exhibition like that is trying to push away the limits, or not the limits, but the new censorship, which
Yeah.
seems to be a so-called avant-garde.
Yeah. Excellent. Bravo. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us, and especially Jean-Clair and Laura for giving us this incredible glimpse. It makes me even more eager to get to Rome, and I'm happy to say there are a few extra weeks, I think, now to see it, because it was extended for a couple of weeks from the 9th to, I think, the 23rd now, right, of January.
Yeah. 23rd. Yes.
Hopefully, Omicron willing, we can all find our way to Rome and see this in person. If you can't, again, the second best is buy the catalog. It's absolutely stunning. And thank you all for coming and for sharing in this great exhibition.